Hey everybody. Recently I've been doing some live virtual musical performances and I wanted to explain the tech that was behind them. And also I just really like documenting and sharing this kind of stuff. So if anybody's watching this and you learn something from it, hopefully you just kind of pick up on some tips and tricks, and you're really only going to be bound by your own creativity. I ran out of time to implement all of the ideas that I wanted to for that particular performance that you saw in the introduction, so hopefully for a future one, I'll be able to get some more time to implement additional ideas, but I'm sure you'll have your own as well. Now, in terms of the tech setup itself, I'm sure there's room for improvement in my own setup, but I've tried to streamline it as much as possible with as little software and as little hardware as possible. Less is more. So if you have less, it's just easier to maintain things. It's easier to troubleshoot things. There's so many different places where things can go wrong. So just by trying to simplify things as much as possible, it's just going to make your life easier. I'm sure I could go a step farther in streamlining this too, but as you saw in the introduction video, that entire performance went off without a hitch in terms of the technology. Everything worked. So I think what I have going here so far is pretty solid. I'm going to be doing a 3-part series here. In this particular video, I'm going to be focusing on how I set up the instruments in my DAW, mostly my guitar. And in the second video, I'm going to go through how I got OBS and Reaper integrated together, basically how they communicate via MIDI and also through audio. And then in the third video, I'm going to go through the actual lighting setup with the DMX lights, how I program the DMX lights, and then how I got Reaper to talk to my DMX lights. So let's go over what you'll need. And here is a diagram of it all, and it may seem kind of daunting, but I'll walk you through it, and don't worry, this is not going to be the last time you're going to see this particular diagram. So I'm trying to keep things simple again. Like in my own setup, I actually have more lights than this, and I have more cameras that you see here, but just for demonstration purposes and just trying to keep things simple, we're going to keep this to 2 cameras and 2 lights. If you produce your own music, record your own music, whatever, you probably already have a lot of these things. I'm sure you have a PC. You probably have an audio interface of some sort. I have this one happens to be mine. It doesn't have to be this one. As long as your audio interface has a MIDI out, then you'll be able to at least hook up these 2 components together, the audio interface and the DMX controller. And as far as I know, most modern audio interfaces have a MIDI out. You probably have a DAW of some sort. I'm going to be using Reaper. Reaper seems to be pretty popular, mostly because it's very full-featured and it's inexpensive. It's a $60 one-time fee. It's not subscription-based, and it's very, very reasonable, very powerful. And for broadcasting software, I'm using OBS, also another popular choice because it's pretty solid. It has a lot of features, and again, it's open source and free. Again, I'll be talking about this in a little bit more detail in a future video, because right now we're just really going to be focusing on the DAW or the Reaper component for this one. Let's talk about the hardware you'll need. So I mentioned audio interface. Hopefully it has a MIDI out. You'll need a DMX controller, which is a separate piece of hardware. We're going to cover that in the third video, as well as some DMX lights. Now, these are 2 different types of DMX lights. Like this particular light is a moving headlight, so it pans and tilts. And then this stage light is just static. And we'll go over what the differences are and what some of the nuances of the differences of the programming of these lights in the third video. And then, of course, you're going to need cameras. Now, if you're using a single camera, great. If you want to add a second camera, cool. If you want to have 10 cameras, I'm sure you can do that. That was a bit overkill for me. I personally use 3. But I think still, as I'm going to show you in the second video and a little bit in the third video too, is even if you just have 1 camera, you're still going to have a lot of creative possibilities with the technical setup that I'll be showing throughout the entire series. Now, with all that said, let's hop into Reaper, and I'm going to show you how this is all set up. So here's my Reaper project, and it may seem a little complicated right now, which is fine. I'm also going to give you a Reaper project that's similar to this. I'm using some third-party plugins here, which I will take out. I will try to, at least in the template that I'm going to provide you in a download link, which will be in the video below, will at least kind of give you the bare bones of what you need. But then again, it'll also be something a little more referenceable. Obviously, I'm going to be walking you through what I have here, but I think having a actual project file that you can kind of look at and play with is going to be a lot more helpful. And by the way, I'm going to make some assumptions that you're going to have fundamental understanding of some of the terms I'm going to be using, like especially automation. Automation is extremely important here, and it makes most of the magic happen. The first thing I'll do is I'll just kind of go step by step through all the different tracks that are in this project. The first thing I'll show here is this click track. Now, if you're doing a virtual performance and you're not actually having a band behind you, and you're going to need some way to stay in sync with your backing tracks, and you can use a click track to do that. Now, you may be asking, is there a way that only I can hear the click track, but not have the audience hear the click track? And the answer is yes. So we're going to come back to that later, but I'm actually going to be using this trick quite a bit. There is a way that you can play audio through your own monitors, in your own studio or headphones or whatever you're listening to, that only you can hear, but the audience will not be able to hear. The click track is one of those things. I have an audio track here called cues, and what this does is it just plays certain sounds, which gives me a signal to do something. Which in my own case, if I need to move from one camera to another, like for example, if I want to move to a side camera where I'm like playing some kind of a solo or a lead, there will be an audio cue that plays out of my monitors that tells me, hey, go move over there. And don't worry, I'm going to go through like a full example later. So now we have OBS scene control. So this is MIDI that I'm sending to OBS. We're going to come back to this in the second video. And then I have another one called light control. So light control is sending MIDI to my DMX controller, which is controlling the lights. We're going to talk about that in the third video. Next, we have a folder track or a bus track or a bus just called main bus. So this is where I just start grouping some additional things. Now, here I have a track called video clips for OBS. Now, this is something that I've done in my performances where I want to show like some kind of a video during my actual performance. Like obviously this is pretty typical if you're at a real live show, there'll be like a big projector screen or something showing video in the background behind the band. This is kind of the same concept. And this is also a good way, especially if you're playing a song and there's not much going on, like if you're not really playing anything with some kind of interlude where there's just, you're not doing anything, and you don't want to be awkwardly standing there and you want to show the audience something to look at, then this is the trick that I used. And one thing okay, so there's probably some noise coming out of this guitar thing, so I'm going to mute that. We're going to get to that later anyway. So here, one thing that's great about Reaper is you can play and edit videos in Reaper. Now, Reaper's not really video editing software, but it's good enough to get the job done. And in my case, it does some pretty basic things that I think at least kind of make the performance a little more interesting. So here, I'm going to switch to my video view, and you can do that with a shortcut, which is Control-Shift-V, at least on PC. If you're on a Mac, it's probably Command-Shift-V or something similar. But I'm going to switch to this, and when I switch to this view, you'll see that this video file ends up is docked down here. And I'll just play this just to kind of show you. This is the outro of Song of Storms, and this is kind of a way to just kind of, as I play the final notes of my song, to show the audience something as we transition into the next song. And so I think you get the idea there. Now, you'll see a bunch of automation under this track. So if you want to like zoom into this video file or you want to pan left or right, you can automate that too. So let me come up with an example here, and I can show you a quick one. Okay, so like this intro to Gehrman the First Hunter, there's kind of this slow panning left to right shot. The video is not edited this way. It's just a raw shot, but through automation, I kind of built in this panning and zooming that just kind of goes left to right. So I'll show you. I also slowed the video down too. Like it's running at 0.6, it's about like 60% speed, and it kind of syncs up with the music, so it seems a little more dramatic. So again, you can get pretty creative with this stuff. Now we're still went off on a bit of a tangent there. Drums, I use this as just like as a count in for certain songs. Like you don't have to do this. You could just use the click track. But like for example, as I start Darkman for Mega Man 5, like if I were playing this with a full band, the drummer would do some kind of a count in with a hi-hat. So and you can also see that I have a video that plays during the introduction too. So you wouldn't need this track, but I think it's a little more interesting and makes it seem like there's a real band there. Backing tracks. So these are all my backing tracks. I don't think this needs a lot of explanation. You will probably have your own backing tracks, but this is where you actually put those tracks. And you can see that my entire set is just one track after another in order. Now, one thing I think it kind of bears mentioning now is, let's say that, I have this particular project file, which is a set for a certain performance. Now, if I look up here, you can see I have a bunch of different markers just showing the different sections of each song, but I also have I actually have regions set up in Reaper too. If I wanted to change, let's say I'm doing a different set, a different performance, and I want to change the order of my songs, having these regions set up is probably the best way to go, because if you move these around, it takes all of the tracks and all of the automation with it. That way you can just quickly reorder things. And so like that. So if I wanted to play Living Failures instead of Bloodstar Beast, but you kind of get the idea. Okay, so we need to keep moving through the tracks here. So now we're actually getting to instruments. So the way I'm going to actually put my mixer back. So I'll just hit Control M. You can switch between mixer view. Control Shift V will shift between video, and then Control M to show the mixer. So here in this case, I have an instrument bus, which is, we're still under the main bus, so we're kind of like sub-busing or sub-foldering, whatever. But here I have this just a whole bunch of different effects, which are receives for all my actual instruments. You don't have to do it this way. You can put all your effects directly on your instruments. I just prefer to do this because you have more control, and I can EQ each one of these individual tracks on their own to get rid of bad frequencies and things like that. So of course you use whatever works for you. I have a reverb, a chorus, a big verb for certain clean sections that are slow, a delay mostly for lead guitar, and then a long delay for like delay throws and maybe whatever creative stuff I have going on. And you can see here that I actually have built some automation into some of these things, and none of these are new concepts. Like, you would probably do this if you were mixing, but like, for example, like I can change the delay time for certain songs. I may change the volumes of certain things, and so yeah, this is relatively straightforward. And again, you don't have to do it this way. So next is guitars. Of course, now if you're not a guitarist, that's fine. You can, whatever instrument is applicable can go right into this set of folders. But what's important is that you have tracks that are set up to record, and then you can automate on those tracks. So here, I'm going to unmute this. Yeah, so I'm going to unmute this, but then I've got I'll mute these individual tracks because I just have my cable dangling there. It's not plugged into anything, so I don't want you guys to hear the noise. Anyway, so here I have, this is kind of where all the magic happens. So basically what I'm doing is, if I'm playing a certain song and I want to switch between clean guitar to lead guitar, or distorted rhythm guitar to clean guitar, whatever it is, then I'm basically just using automation to do that. Now, of course, if you don't want to do it this way and you have a whole bunch of different effects pedals or a pedal board or whatever, then you're certainly free to do that. And in which case you wouldn't need 3 different tracks here. Just have one, and then control that with your pedals. Now, going back to what I said at the beginning of the video, to keep it simple, that's also kind of my goal here. When I was doing this live virtual performance, like, I'm listening to audio cues, I need to know where to stand, where to move. So there's a lot going on, and having to worry about like which pedal I need to be pressing and being in the right position in order to press those pedals with my feet is just another layer of complexity. So I'm not so worried about that. Like, if I'm doing an actual live performance in front of people, I wouldn't be worried about that as much. But I think the point is that even if you're a purist and you want to use your pedals, that's fine. But again, I'm just trying to keep things simple and streamlined here. So, but the trick here is that you would have your track set up. So in this case, I have 3 tracks set up, and each one of them corresponds to, so we have rhythm guitar, which is distorted rhythm guitar, and lead guitar, and clean guitar. They're all on the same input. So input 3 in my case just happens to be my direct input for my guitar. So that's, I have that going into my audio interface. They're all, so same input for each of the 3 tracks, the monitor is on for all of these, pretty much like every other track, and the record is armed for each of the 3 tracks. Now, you don't want out of the box, this is not exactly what you would want, because you would hear the a distorted guitar signal and a lead guitar signal and a clean guitar signal all at the same time, and that's not what you want when you're playing. You only want your audience to hear one of those things at a time. So what you would do, and I think now I'll start unmuting some things, and this may get a little annoying because there'll be some background noise, but I just kind of want to, actually, I bet if I go to the very beginning of the project, yeah, there we go. At the very beginning of the project, everything is muted because this is the introduction to Song of Storms. There are no instruments, so every single instrument is muted. Now, here, what you're seeing is, and I think this is a good time to do kind of a walkthrough of this. Now, right now, the introduction to Song of Storms is there's nothing. You just kind of hear the rain, hitting the ground. But the introduction starts with clean guitar. So right here, you'll see that there's an automation lane here for mute. And when this is down, the instrument is muted. And then when this is up, it's unmuted. So there's really only 2 settings for this particular automation lane. It's mute or unmute. Now, here's another trick, which I think is good to talk about. Within Reaper, if you set up a marker with an exclamation point and a number after it, which is just an ID number, it's a command. So this is kind of a topic all on its own, but all you really need to know here is that exclamation mark 40073 means to pause. So let's say, so here's the end of, what song is this? This is, because this is the end of Darkman. So I have a pause here because I want to stop and talk to the audience. So let's let this go. That way, I can stop here, talk to the audience, and then when I'm ready to play the next song, I just hit the space bar on my keyboard, and which unpauses Reaper. So that is the, I did mention I was going to come back to this, so I want to make sure I do that before I wrap up here. So I mentioned, how do you send certain audio to only OBS and then keep certain audio that only you can hear? So see right here on this main bus, I have a plugin set up for, that's a Reaper plugin called ReaStream. And this is kind of the trick, at least that I know of, to send audio from Reaper to OBS. I have never been able to figure this out. Like, you can't just add Reaper you can't just do an audio or window capture of Reaper within OBS and it will not pick up the audio. And this has kind of perplexed me for years. I couldn't figure out a reliable way to do this until I watched some instructional mixing video where the guy doing it just kind of talked about this very quickly and offhand. I was like, whoa. Like, this is something I never knew about. We're going to come back to this in the next video, but I think we might want to talk about this now really quick. But anyway, what this does is it sends the audio of this particular track, which is every track underneath it. So all my instruments and the effects and everything, it'll send it somewhere. So what I'm saying is just send this audio to this machine, local host. And then if you have another program that has ReaStream set up on it as a VST plugin, you just set it to receive. And again, we'll do this in the next video, but that's how you get OBS to actually capture the audio that's coming out of Reaper. Now, the magic here is that if I were to set up ReaStream on the master bus, you would hear everything that's in this project, including the click tracks, the cues, not the scene controls. There's no audio on these, but that is kind of how you create this immersion and kind of obfuscate some of the things that you're doing behind the scenes. So I'm actually going to do this really quick just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to just drag and drop ReaStream over to the master bus. I'll mute this. But what's going to happen here is I'll play the introduction of Song of Storms, and you're going to hear an audio cue and you're going to hear a click track which are basically signals to me to, one, when I hear the audio cue, move to the side camera, and then when I hear 2 bars or 2 measures of the click track, then I start playing the clean guitar. So I think that's pretty neat. It's a good way for you to kind of obfuscate certain things from the audience. All right, so I realize this is probably a bit of a crash course and I might have went through things pretty quickly, but again, you can review the video again if you need to, but I will also have a downloadable template file, which is just really bare bones, just to kind of give you something to look at on your own if a lot of this just didn't make sense. But again, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Let me know if you have any just ideas or other ways to streamline things. I'm always open to different ways of doing things. You know, the way I'm doing it is not necessarily the best or the right way. So, but regardless, thanks for watching this, and I'll see you next time in part 2, where we'll be talking about how to get OBS and Reaper integrated together.